Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another 10 Adventures webinar. I'm Richard, the founder of 10 Adventures, and today we are talking about how to train for an adventure. And you might notice Nadine or Alex aren't hosting. Why is Richard hosting? And it's because I've actually been the guinea pig over the last 10 weeks doing one of the programs we're going to discuss today. So I'll be able to share what it's actually like to train this way. And before going forward, I know we always get a lot of questions, so I just want you to know you can submit questions during the webinar using the chat. And what I'll do is I'll tally them and we'll let our guest answer them at the end of the webinar. If we don't get around to your question, then we will get it answered afterwards. And now on to the star of our show today. I'd like to welcome the founder of Uphill Athlete, Steve House, to tell us more about how to train for our incredible mountain adventures. As some background, Steve is a world-renowned alpinist, mountain guide, author, filmmaker. What hasn't he done? Prior to founding Uphill Athlete, he wrote Training for the New Alpinism, which really set the foundation for how to train to recreate in the mountains. Hi, Steve. Welcome to this webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. It's been really great getting to know you and your amazing organization doing a lot of incredible stuff out there. It's cool to follow along.
And hey, it's been really cool. This is like unlike any training I've ever done. I've told you on a few emails. It's such a different way to train. So I'm really excited to actually understand more why it's so different and learn more about the theory behind this. So why don't we step right in? And I know you are going to share kind of everything about this program and really educate us. So I'm just going to let you take the reins and listen in like one of the audience for a little while.
Okay, great. Thanks. I will spend about a half an hour to go through basically the foundations of how and why this all works. And as Richard said, he'll be keeping track of questions. And yeah, let's get going. So as Richard said, I wrote, let me see, I'm having a little trouble with a new piece of software here. I wrote a number of books about training for climbing, mountaineering, and mountain running and ski mountaineering. And I myself was a professional climber for 22 years. I was working with Patagonia primarily, a bunch of other outdoor brands. I was also the first North American to win the what is called the Pile d'Or, which is the Golden Ice Axe, which is the award given to the best climb of the year. Every year, one climb in the whole world gets this award. And so I've been doing this my whole life. You know, this was literally my career. Those books and all that experience got wrapped into launching Uphill Athlete about 8 years ago. And since then, I've had all kinds of experience with all kinds of athletes. A lot of people are like, oh, you are working with, Olympians and professional athletes. And it's like, well, yes, we work with a few of those, but we actually work with mostly with people who have regular jobs. And so people like Brooks there, this guy Jesse, who's a family doctor who always wanted to climb the Grand Teton, got in shape, went over and climbed the Grand Teton. So I'm well familiar with all of the challenges associated with climbing these mountains, and I'm here to help each and every one of you, improve your fitness to accomplish your adventures. So I'm going to start with some key concepts, and a lot of times I'm just going to lay the foundation. Like almost anything in science, we have a mental model for how this works. Our model for how to train for any kind of endurance sport, and by endurance is in the scientific community defined as anything longer than 2 minutes, because that's when you shift from pure anaerobic to typically aerobic. So this is really well understood science, really well understood physiology. I like to say that with these books and with Uphill Athlete, I never invented anything new. All I did was take well understood exercise physiology and training principles that have been developed for sports like endurance running, endurance cycling, endurance swimming, any endurance human-powered activity. It's all been studied and tested at millions of starting lines around the world for 100 years. So this is pretty well understood stuff, and then we just took it and translated it for non-typical adventures, starting with mountaineers, of course, because that was the sport that I came from. And you'll notice that there's this one comment here that aerobic deficiency is the norm among mountaineers. And what that means is a lot of us, because of our mostly sedentary lifestyles, our aerobic systems are not well trained. And that is the basis that we need for engaging in a lot of anything from trekking to long distance cycling to any kind of thing, anything longer than a few minutes, really. And it's important to understand that endurance is a metabolic quality. And what that means is as you exercise, your body there's a metabolic process by which your body produces locomotion, and the muscles, we all know the muscles contract, and your breathing, your heart's beating, and all of the basic things that we all understand. But there's a whole cascade of adaptations that happen that make that metabolic process of both producing the energy and removing the waste product produced by producing the energy more efficient. And so what we need to do is pretty simple from a coaching or training perspective, is we need to help people improve their aerobic capacity. And there's a lot of benefits to this. There's, of course, basic health benefits, but in terms of endurance, this has all kinds of advantages. When you're more aerobically fit, you recover faster. A lot of us who are, if you're older and you're out of shape and you're like, man, I used to be able to, hike all day when I was in college, and then I was fine the next day, and now I'm 50 years old. I can't do that anymore. It's like some of that is age, but actually a lot of that is that you don't have an aerobic system that's adapted. There's less oxidative stress in your body, your cold resistance is better, it improves your adaptation to altitude, and all of this is really due, helping with, especially with high altitude things. Any kind of trek or like a Kilimanjaro climb, something like that. Even a cycling tour where you're going up over 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet, you're going to improve the utilization of oxygen when relatively little oxygen is available. So we know that we're really capable of all kinds of things as humans. It's incredible what the human body can do, from incredible sprints to climbing the highest mountain in the world without supplemental oxygen. That gets done. And one of the things I try to tell people is as a reality check, especially if you're older than 25, is that it's really important that we just try to improve one capacity at a time. So if you're signing up for a Kilimanjaro trek or a cycling trek, let's focus on doing that. It doesn't work to improve your fitness for Kilimanjaro and have your best season of tennis ever. They're too different to train for, and they'll detract from one another, and you won't make progress, especially as you get older. So it's really important to understand set the expectations. So when I talk about endurance being a metabolic quality, it is this idea of just taking food as chemical energy and using it to turning that into motion. And the most important part of this is this little molecule called ATP. And basically we can really simplify this and say that endurance training increases the production or the synthesis in our body of this ATP molecule. So that's all we have to do, right? Simple, end of lecture. Okay, but what actually works to help create more ATP? Well, I'm going to tell you in a minute, but first we also want to think about what limits endurance. One of the things that limits endurance is, and I think we can all have had this experience at one point in our lives where we sprinted after something or ran after something, and we were going as hard as we could, and then eventually we were forced to slow down. And in the most simplistic way, that is our blood lactate elevating. That's a waste product from producing energy, and that acidity signals your body to reduce ATP production and tell you to slow down. So there's two things: we can increase ATP, and we can also improve the waste removal process, if you will. So we want to increase ATP synthesis, and we want to do things that allow us to remove more lactate more quickly. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, good news, the same type of training accomplishes both of these goals. So the first step to increase ATP production, what increases that? Well, there's a bunch of things that go on in our bodies. Our bodies are incredibly complex. When we start doing aerobic exercise, there's these 4 things here that I've got bulleted, but we know that about 2/3 of the switches on the human genome are either up or down regulated. That means like basically 2/3 of our DNA is changing. And most of these things, we don't even know what they do yet, is changing and somehow in response to this regular aerobic exercise. So what I'm trying to say is that the response to the stimulus of aerobic training is incredibly complex. And that's the beauty of exercise physiology. But at the basic level, we're talking about these things. So all of these respond to duration of what we call zone 2 training. And I'm going to get to that in a second. I want to pause because I'm going to address a common confusion. A lot of times when people think about aerobic fitness, they think, well, I'm just going to go out and I need to run faster, for example, or I need to hike faster. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to hike really fast every day or every 2 days. And that doesn't work. And the reason that people think that is I think that we have a simplistic model of training in our minds that is analogous to strength training. We know that if we lift a heavier weight each day, or every couple of days, our muscles will grow in size and we'll eventually be able to adapt and lift the heavier weight. And these adaptations are visible. We can see the muscle tissues visibly change. Aerobic training doesn't work that way because it's a metabolic process. And so what we need to do is we need to spend a lot of time at a relatively low intensity of training, and we need to enhance that metabolism. So what is zone 2 training? There's a lot of different ways to talk about this, but the most simple way is to say that this is the kind of exercise, aerobic exercise, doesn't matter if it's on your bike or you're hiking or you're on a treadmill or what it is, that you can do and you can hold a conversation without too much trouble. It's not so hard that you can't talk. That's a higher heart rate zone, and these zones we're talking about heart rate. So we have these tools, and the heart rate is important because we do need to monitor and control for the intensity of the training, which is another way of saying how hard you train. That's the way we monitor it. We need to have a chest or arm strap, heart rate strap. The wrist top heart rate monitors are not yet accurate enough, especially if if the watch is not tight to your wrist. And we need to understand that we can never substitute higher intensity for more duration. There's no shortcut to doing this. You can't speed the process. It takes the amount of time it takes. So while I'm on this point, it typically takes 4 to 8 weeks to see noticeable gains. And that's another reason that this is sometimes hard for people, is it's not immediate. But once you start ramping up, I'll talk about this in a second, those changes progress for a very long time. So We need to monitor and control for intensity. We can't go hard over going long and slow. We have to increase our training volume gradually because our body adapts gradually. There's no way to speed up or catalyze our body's adaptations. And we also, the opposite of monitoring and controlling for intensity is monitoring and controlling for your fatigue level and how you're recovering. Lastly, specificity. If you're walking, you need to do this footborne. If you're cycling, then you need to do it on a bike. Whatever your goal is, you're not going to be successful trying to condition yourself for Kilimanjaro by swimming laps in the swimming pool. Even though swimming is a fantastic aerobic exercise, it's just too different, and you're not going to have the specific muscle development that you need to climb up Kilimanjaro. So we can monitor and control for an intensity in 4 different ways, and mostly we use heart rate monitoring. There's other ways to do it. You can do it by what we call perception, and we have guidance for that as to what that means. We can go down that rabbit hole if you want. We use heart rate monitors. That's mostly what we use, probably about 75% heart rate monitors, about 25% perception, and maybe 5% of, I know this doesn't add up to 100, but maybe about 5% of blood lactate and ventilation, because if you want to get really techie and go to a lab, and if you're an elite athlete, you may want to go to a lab and get your blood lactate levels measured while you're exercising to really pinpoint your zones. This chart briefly tries to show us a number of things, but what I mostly want to show is the x-axis here as your heart rate, as you start going harder, faster, when you're walking slowly, you're primarily metabolizing fat. Most of this is not the fat that we all have underneath our, skin and our belly. This is not the beer belly fat. This is the fat that is stored intramuscularly, because that is the fat that is stored intramuscularly is there to be used as a fuel. Once those stores fill up, your body starts stashing it around other places, which we're all familiar with, I'm sure. I certainly am. But that's where we're metabolizing fat in the low intensity exercise. As we start to get up to this sort of intensity where we're having trouble holding a conversation, we're kind of dipping into both. We're still aerobic, but we're starting to get into what's called glycolytic metabolism, which glycolytic metabolism is you're using sugar as a fuel. And the problem with that is that we only have around 2,000 calories, the most of carbohydrate on board at any time. And so we can run out. And when it's gone, it's like turning off the tap. And many of us have had this experience on the trails where we just kind of hit the wall. If you've run marathons, those kinds of things, you may know this feeling. Like you just kind of hit the wall, you run out of energy, and it feels like you're all of a sudden you feel like you're wearing lead shoes. That's going from when the glycolytic metabolism runs out of carbohydrate to use to produce fuel. So we want, on these long days, this is why we want to stay in these lower intensity exercises. Because that's the metabolism we want to enhance. We want to enhance that fat metabolism. This is not to say that this is going to help you lose a lot of weight. Like I said, this is not subcutaneous fat. This is intramuscular fat. The weight loss is kind of a different subject, but it does mean that you will be able to go for hours and hours and hours and feel good. And I think we all know this intuitively. Any one of us can go out and walk around our neighborhood, go for a walk with your dog, for example, and you can probably walk quite a long time with your dog. But if you go and run as fast as your dog can run, you probably can't go as long that way, right? So intuitively that makes sense, I'm sure. So besides the heart rate zone, the other way we control for getting the right training stimulus is the duration of the workout. So the duration could be from roughly 30 minutes to many, many hours. and just depends on how fit you are, where you're starting out, and where you've progressed to. And this is our primary aerobic stimulus. And this is monitored. We use software these days to help us monitor this, or coaches and that kind of thing. And so we have these two factors. So most of our workouts will say, okay, we want you to do a 30-minute walk, however you do it, treadmill, Stairmaster, doesn't matter. Outside, of course, always best. And then you will do that at this heart rate for this long. That's basically what most of the workouts look like. Okay, so we want to we combine this, and we talk, and this all the intensity and the duration over time is called the training load. So what we do, and most people start off with training around 4 to 5 hours per week. Elite athletes are training 20 plus hours per week. And that's actual training time, actual time on their feet moving, not just like tying their shoes and the other stuff. But that we know from, a century of doing this as a species that works. We also have to have what we call rest days and recovery weeks. Typically, it's about 3 hard weeks and 1 easy week. That's kind of a typical formula, but there's other things. And when you work, for example, with a coach, that gets customized to you, because we're all a little different. We have different stresses, etc. But that's an important part of this. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. So, and the last part is this specificity principle. I mentioned this briefly, but it's really important and it bears mentioning again. You need to train primarily for the event that you're training in. You need to train in the same way you're going to do the event. So if you're, like I said, a bike tour, you want to train on your bike. Foot-borne, you're going to be on your feet. If it's flat, you want to do your training flat. If it's got a lot of vertical, you need to get on some trails or use treadmills, etc. One of the things that people often stumble up on is they think that they've got to carry a pack because they're going trekking, so they immediately start training with a backpack, and that's not correct. You need to establish that metabolism, get that aerobic base established before adding weight in a backpack. You'll progress, in the long run, you'll progress much further and much faster. Hypoxic training here is referring to people going to high altitude. When we have athletes going to anything above 10,000 feet, we like to get them in a normobaric hypoxic tent for around 400 hours total over about a month, spread over 4 to 6 weeks. Some of you have seen these tents, and there's different kinds of breathing devices and stuff. And this speeds up the acclimatization process and makes the trip a lot more comfortable. And this, again, is something that needs to be done after you're already aerobically fit. So a lot of the message here too is that you don't want to wait till the last minute to start training. You can kind of never be too fit for these things, and 4 weeks is really not enough to give your metabolism a chance to adapt. We really like to see people training for ideally at least 12 weeks, and 16, 24 and longer is even better. And we have athletes, just to give you a bit of perspective, a human can maximize the genetic potential as an endurance athlete in about 120 months. So if you have 10 years, you can maximize your genetic potential. So having 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks of training is really kind of the minimum. And this is what this looks like over either a week or years. So I want to, these vertical white arrows are the moments you train, and then the red line is your fitness. And if you get up in the morning, you go out and you do some training, when you come back, you're actually less fit from a metabolic perspective than you were when you left. And your body is like, hey, I'm tired, you need to feed me, you need to rest me, and then it starts to build back. And then the next morning, typically 24 hours, your body's slightly fitter than it was the day before, and you train again. And this is really important to understand this, because this is how you get long-term progression. You can also visualize the same graph on weeks or scales of weeks or years. This is how you get long-term progression. The timing of the training is really important, which is another way of saying the consistency is really important. You need to train a minimum of 4 days a week. Just going out on Saturday and Sunday and then doing nothing from Monday to Friday is not going to help you adapt. The Monday through Friday is just too long. Your body is essentially too lazy. It won't maintain adaptations it doesn't think it needs, and so it will get rid of all the adaptations that it may have started on Tuesday. You may have created some adaptations to the training stress from Saturday and Sunday, but by Thursday or Friday, your body's been like, oh, we don't actually need this. We're going to get rid of it. This is a colorful graph, but mostly what I want to show here, just real simply, is that each of these lines is the gray bar is a training session. And let's say this training session lasts 2 hours. And basically the takeaway here is the more intense the training session, the more hours, the x-axis is hours, the longer it takes you to recover. So a really light exercise like walking your dog, you may be recovered in just a few hours. But if you lift heavy weights in a gym, you may need 3 days to recover. So this and the other factor to this is each of us is an individual, and to some extent we each respond to training, and our bodies go into fatigue differently. And it depends on genetics, depends on diet, it depends on other stressors in your life, depends on how well you sleep, it depends on all kinds of things. And so the training, the most famous coaches in the world will tell you that they can give 100 people the same workout and they'll get 100 different responses. And this is what they mean. They won't be massively different, but we're each individuals and will each respond differently. I like to try to summarize this for you, and then we'll get to some questions, and I'll tell you about some ways to train, and then I'll get to some questions. But think of it as a cascade effect. You do a workout, and that creates a metabolic stress, which causes your body to say, hey, we need some metabolic adaptations, and that results in improved endurance performance. And you run that cycle dozens or hundreds of times, and you have vastly improved in performance. So there's a number of different ways you can train. And, we've worked really hard at Uphill Athlete to come up with different ways for people to train, because everyone has different needs, different availability, different starting in different places, different ages. And so I'll just cover a couple of these. The most popular way we have is through our memberships. We have 3 levels at 3 price points that offer different levels of service. I'll explain, and Richard has a code to give each of you a discount on any of these levels of training, and each of them give you access to a training community, training plans, workout libraries, a sophisticated software called Training Peaks to monitor your training, everything you need to know. And it's sort of, you can think of this as, the cheaper one is more do it yourself, and as you ramp up in price, you get more service, you get more help, you get more education, you get more time with coaches, etc. Our premium offering is coaching, where we have one-on-one coaching. You actually get your own coach, and he or she works directly with you, and every workout is built custom for you, and your recovery is analyzed every day, and that's obviously the best, but it's also the most expensive. And but you can kind of dial up and down on commitment. A lot of people will start with the training plan, do that for a month, and then they say, you know what, I'm not able to figure this out myself. I want to dial up to a coach, that kind of thing. Another component is nutrition. We have nutrition coaching. There can be a variety of reasons for wanting nutrition coaching, whether it's weight loss or wanting to make sure, you're, for example, going to Kilimanjaro and you're vegetarian. You may need to be concerned about supplementing with iron, things like, getting a diet that is going to prepare your body for going to high altitude. And, we are always here to talk to anybody. There's free links on our website, uphillathlete.com. We have both training inquiries and just customer support. It's always free. You can always reach us there. And Richard and the team at 10 Adventures also has those coupons for all of you to get discounts on all of these training options. So yeah, I know, Richard, you have had some experience with training. Do you want to share some of that now, or sorry to put you on the spot?
Definitely. So like in my life, I've been in group training. I've been in private training with like a strength coach. I've been a member of the Calgary Tri Club. I'm super active. And so when I started this, I kind of thought, oh, this will be just like everything I've done before. And I think what really surprised me is how different this training has been from anything I've ever done. And actually one of my questions was, this training is really full body focused. Like there's lots of things where you're using, your core, your arms, your legs, and there's a lot of balance focus. And I have terrible balance. And I really, I'm noticing a big change, and I've never had that. And so can you maybe talk about why that's so important for this training, and then how it manifests itself when we're out on the trails, when we're out on our bike, if we're ski touring, climbing, trekking, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's because, all the mountain sports we do you're essentially on one leg at a time. So if you're hiking up a steep trail, one of that back leg comes up off the ground and you're having to stabilize up, from your ankle up through your knee, through your hip, your core. You're carrying a backpack. You may be using trekking poles. The trail could be loose and your foot could slip a little bit and you have to maintain balance. So that's the reality of mountain sports, right? So we created training that takes that reality into account. That's where in a lot of conventional sports like cycling or swimming or running on a track, it's more like a racetrack kind of mentality where you're trying to elevate human performance, but on the same exact, sort of substrate all the time, and that's just something fundamentally different. All right. Like, cycling, I think is the best example, because typically, your pedal stroke it doesn't change from stroke after, the first stroke or the millionth stroke, but, hiking on a trail, like almost two steps are almost never the same.
It's interesting you mentioned cycle training. So what I do, for the last 10 years at home is get on my bike trainer and, do a workout based on my zones. And what I found is on this program, I switched to going on the treadmill at 15%. And I'm still in very similar zones, but it feels really different to me. And I actually went out 2 weekends ago and just did this kind of training hike I often do in the winter. And I was just flying up. And I thought, I'm still working the same heart rate. On the bike, it's all wattage, but I've been working the same zones, but I'm a lot quicker going uphill. And I assume that's just because I've been doing a ton of treadmill work at a high grade, and that's just training my body to do that a lot more effectively.
Yeah, exactly. That's that specificity principle. You're training for hiking, and the treadmill is not exactly like hiking on a trail, but it's a lot closer than cycling is.
Interesting. So we've had some questions that came in advance. We've also had some questions in the chat. And actually, there's two questions that are very similar. Marcus mentioned he wants to train for a high altitude trek when he lives in a flat place in Ohio. We had Jenny ask, how should I train for trekking in Nepal if I live at sea level and don't have mountains nearby? I know lots of people want to go to these incredible places in the Himalaya, but they don't have anywhere near that elevation. And so how would you approach this?
Yeah, this is literally our bread and butter of working with, mountaineers, trekkers, and, there is a lot you can do. There's a couple of things, obviously having natural terrain. If you live out in the mountains somewhere, of course, that's great, right? There's different options. One of the great options is stairs, like in a building or in a stadium. If you live in Boston, go down to Harvard Stadium and do the stairs. If you live in New York City, there's probably maybe your building has a stairwell you can use. There's, of course, the treadmill like you're using, Richard. That works really well. Stair steppers. I'm going to go from best to least desirable. It would be like actual terrain to then doing stairs in a building or in a stadium, then doing a treadmill, then doing a stair stepper. And then the last one is like a box step up, like stepping up and down off a box. That is great. It's just really boring, right? And people have a hard time doing hours and hours of that. So, and some, in reality, most of us are doing some variation of that. Like, maybe you're on the treadmill one day, maybe you're on a stair stepper the next day, maybe you meet a friend at the stadium for a workout the next morning. Like, you just mix it up, and that's fine.
There's another question from Betty, and she asks, what are the best exercises for strengthening to carry a backpack? So I'm not sure if it's the first backpacking trip or maybe just getting better, but are there certain areas people should focus on if they're going to be doing backpacking?
Yeah. I want to address something I sort of skipped over in one of the earlier question is the altitude component. With people that live at sea level, one of the things that we do, and I kind of would say specialize in, is coaching people with these hypoxic tents or masks and using that. It really makes a big difference. These tents have been around for about 20 years. I experimented with them 2 decades ago myself, but we've gotten much better at understanding what's going on with the body when we get this altitude exposure in either sleeping at home or doing a workout on a treadmill or something like that. And we're getting pretty good at it. And that's something I would definitely recommend for people going to a place like Nepal for trekking, if you live at sea level. And excellent. To the question about the backpack, again, we developed with one of our coaches who's also a doctor in physical therapy. We work together as a team of coaches. So we have 17 coaches and we all work together as a team. And about 4 years ago now, we worked with one of our coaches who's this physical therapist. His name is Neil McLean Martin, and we developed a series of strength training program we call Chamonix Mountain Fit. Chamonix, of course, is one of the most famous mountain towns in the world, and sounded fun. So, and that's what you've been doing, I think, Richard, right?
It's been doing some incredible. Of those? It's been incredible, and I think I mentioned to you, it's like my joints have been oiled afterwards, and it's like kind of mobility, kind of strength. It's pretty tough. Like you think, oh, you're just whatever. It's pretty tough, but there's something in there that obviously I'm getting to muscles and places I haven't gotten to, and afterwards I'm like, holy crow, I feel fantastic.
Yeah, and it's those one-legged movements. So you're kind of balancing and strengthening on one leg at a time. And again, like backpacking, you are one-legged, at a time. We're of course bipedal, but we're lifting one foot up, and so you've got to balance and stabilize that backpack on your upper body while you're basically on one leg as you repeatedly walk. So this Chamonix Mountain Fit has been our best effort at creating something that will address exactly this. And it's the same for mountaineers. It's exactly the same. And it's the same for trail runners. And trail runners, especially like these ultra runners now and stuff, they have to carry like 12 or 14 pounds of stuff with them. Like, it's actually not an insignificant amount of weight. And mountaineers are on the other extreme where they sometimes have 80-pound backpacks. They have these massive backpacks. So this program that we've developed with Chamonix Mountain Fit is exactly addressing this issue. And, it seems counterintuitive because there's no you don't do that training with a backpack on, right? You do the training for, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and you go out on the weekend, you take your backpack, you do it, you're going to, like Richard, you just said, you're going to notice it. And that's how the training actually works. Yeah, that helps.
And I I'm not training for skiing, but when I go skiing, I'm really initiating my turns a lot better. And I think it's from the Sham Fit, because I just feel more stable. There's a great question from Cynthia online, and she says, I came in late, but as uphill athlete offer recovery training programs. I tore my Achilles 14 months ago and trying to work back to pre-injury levels of fitness. This is a huge issue. I hear it all the time where people are put out of commission. Some people miss the entire season. They never get rehabilitated.
Yeah, absolutely. We do that. And we actually have a physical therapist on staff, and that's all he does is prehab and rehab programs for people. Because prehab being like if you know you're gonna go into a surgery, we know that it's better to do as much strengthening as you can before you go under the knife. And then of course rehab is what you're talking about here. The other thing I would say is one way to think about you can kind of dial the commitment level with training. You can use a training plan, and you can kind of use it as a rough guide, and you don't have to follow it to the T and that kind of thing. And you can go dial it up to having a coach. The other thing is the more unique you are in terms of your needs, and this includes injury, recovery from injury. If you're older, like over 50, like I am now, the more unique you are as an athlete, the more you should probably be with a coach, because that's where we can really dial in things and address your unique needs.
Steve, I've had this terrible ankle. I've had so many sprains on my right ankle. It's kind of always in mild pain now. I'm just like, why am I an idiot not talking to you guys to start fixing that? And there's something I'm taking away. There's a similar question that was submitted in advance from Brenda, and she said, I don't find the walking a problem, but afterwards I get really stiff and my muscles ache the next day. Will this program help with muscle aches?
Interesting. Yeah. I think what's probably going on there is a nutrition hydration thing if somebody in that case, but I would need to ask her more information about what's going on. But in a sense, of course, yes, because as you saw in the slideshow that I did, one of the benefits of having a better aerobic capacity is you recover faster, and that was certainly part of it. We also built, similar to Chamonix Mountain Fit, we built a recovery. We partnered with a yoga teacher that's in our community, and we call it Yoga for Recovery. And we have these specific short 15-minute classes that are hip specific, shoulder specific, knee and ankle specific. So we do have some bespoke recovery solutions for athletes that are built into all the training offerings and the memberships and the coaching.
Excellent. There's a question from Umer, and kind of to boil it down, this is a great program for people that want to measure and like the science. Some people hate the science and the measurement. How can people train if they don't want to measure? Can the program be simplified so there's not all this work on heart rates? And I know I look at my TSS, I think it is. I don't even know what that measurement is. But when my TSS is way above what was scheduled, I'm like, oh yeah, I killed TSS today. I don't even know if that's good, but I feel good, feel happy with myself.
Yeah. That's the training stress score. But not to go down the data rabbit hole, because the question is actually the opposite. And so that's where we talk about perception. So, we have guidance where we have written and video format, we can, and also of course if some people we work with as coaches want to work that way too, and we just teach people how to monitor their intensity by feel, and we can see, we know what's supposed to happen. So essentially what happens over time, in 4 weeks, if we're not seeing an athlete going faster and feeling like it's easier, then something's wrong with the training. That's literally, you go faster and it feels easier. That's exactly the result. Most of the time that happens within 4 weeks. People respond at different rates, depends on how consistent people are, how well they're doing their recovery, and so on. But that's typically, we should be seeing a difference by then. And if we're not, then we can start investigating.
Excellent. There's other questions submitted in advance from Ashley. Should I be doing a different training program as a woman versus a man?
great question. Yeah, we actually have a female uphill athlete training group, we call it, within our membership levels. And then all the women who are coached also are, or not all of them, but they have the option, if they're coached individually, they have the option to join this group too. And so we have support specifically for female athletes. Half of our coaches are women. Our director of coaching is a woman, and so we're really working hard to provide good. And they're specifically nutrition, training adaptations you want to make around different periods of your menstrual cycle, et cetera, that you need to be aware of to get the most out of it. And that support is something we absolutely offer.
Excellent. I have a couple questions. I still have a few more from that were asked in advance, but I have a couple questions. You talked about the focus on recovery, and I've heard a lot of people saying, hey, one of the biggest hacks I had was I started to build recovery into my program. Now, in my case, I'm often using the days off to go do family stuff. So we'll go snowshoeing or we'll go downhill skiing. And there's some days where I'm just shattered, and I just say, okay, I'm taking a day off and I'll move stuff around. But the day off, is that, no, don't go spend the day, skiing with the kids, or don't go snowshoeing with the kids, because that is
not a rest day. That is not as a father of two not super old boys yet. Taking my kids skiing. I mean, we're at the stage where they put their skis on and ski and do everything by themselves now. But especially if you have younger kids, where you're in that phase where you got to carry all the stuff, you got to hold them up while you put their boots on and all that stuff. That's hard work. I think we all know that. So this is one of the things that a lot of Type A people, they'll get a training plan and they'll follow it to the T. And that's a sure way to get into trouble. So because they're not taking, and I've made this mistake myself multiple times, believe me, I'm speaking from personal experience. I trained as a professional climber for 22 years, so I made all the mistakes. But it's really easy to say okay, I'm going to just the calendar says I should do this today. I'm going to do this today. And then the next day you're helping your buddy, I don't know, move, or you're going skiing with the kids or whatever. And then okay, well, and you don't count that. That counts. That's physical. That puts you, that does not help you recover. So again, if you have a lot of that kind of stuff, the other time where it's really useful to have a coach, or at least some coach support, in the higher levels of the training group, then it's important to have someone that, if you're traveling a lot, if your schedule is really erratic, if you're working crazy shifts, these are all things that make you more of a unique snowflake from a training perspective, and you need more hands-on help.
So it's funny you mentioned about these unique schedules. So, being a dad, having my own company, sometimes life gets in the way. And so I find there's some weeks where I'm moving the training around because, I can only do, I can't do a workout and then, strength and then some cardio. So I'll do an easier workout. I'll move the days around. And I've always wondered, is moving the stuff around, is that negating some of the benefit? Because, I'm doing 2 hard days in a row, for example. Or I did ShomFit 2 out of 3 days last week because I love, that's when I feel like I'm terrible at balance. I'm was I just screwing my body up doing that?
Short answer is probably, yeah. In coaching, we refer to that as the training density. So the workouts are distributed how they are across the week for a reason. And for example, strength, it's sort of like that one graph I showed where, it drives you into fatigue and then it takes a certain amount of time to recover. Strength training is one of the things that takes you longer to recover from. So you typically want to have at least 48 hours between strength workouts as a rule of thumb. The other, again, if you're finding yourself into that situation, there is support for that at a variety of levels, whether you're in the training group and you can ask the chat, or whether you have a coach and they do those adjustments for you. There is support for that, but you can get away with that for a week or two, but if that's every week, then that's probably a recipe for, it would be a flashing yellow light. I would want to check on things and make sure you're okay.
I gotta take more recovery. I gotta do the stuff as prescribed. There's a couple more questions. Mark asks, are there any supplements you suggest taking while training?
Yeah, this is a highly. I'm going to say no is the short answer, but of course, it's the real answer is it depends, and it depends on you and your diet and all kinds of other variables. Before we start talking about supplements, we always want to talk about diet first and make sure that your basic diet is squared away. The best place to get nutrients from is real food, and then if there's places where we're missing something, then we can talk about supplementation. That's kind of our philosophy. We have 2 dietitians on staff, and they do our nutrition coaching, and they also do phone consults, so you can schedule a call and talk to one of them for half an hour and ask them specific questions, or an hour, however long it takes. And so those would be a question for our dietitian, because it depends, and I would have to find out a lot more about you as an individual before saying like this is what you need.
And I missed one of my favorite questions that was in the chat. Next year I'll be 81 years young. This is Andy. Is it ever too late to improve my endurance? And kind of a frame of this, it's funny, my parents have kind of said, okay, we're not going to be super active on holiday anymore. They kind of just announced that this year. And I thought, oh, you're still in pretty good shape. Like, why did you just decide not to do this? And are my parents right? Should they be slowing down and not trying to work on this as they age?
Yeah, I would encourage, like Scott to absolutely work on this. So one of the things we all lose muscle mass as we age. It's known as sarcopenia. And, I think we're all familiar with this just visually. If you think about how your grandmother looks, or your 80-year-old neighbor or whatever, they don't carry as much muscle mass. And one of the best things you can do to maintain a healthy lifestyle and prolong your life is strength training. And it's because you maintain more muscle mass, and our muscles are not just for getting us around. They're also, we're finding out they're also, secrete all kinds of hormones, and, they really help. There's a lot of health benefits to maintaining a healthy functioning muscle mass. So absolutely, the older you, and this is what we do with all our athletes starting at about 50, we start to tip the balance more towards strength training, less towards endurance training. And that's to largely keep the muscle mass there as much as possible. So the worst thing you can do, is stop doing anything, honestly. Because then your body is ruthlessly efficient. If it thinks it doesn't need something, if it doesn't need this muscle mass, it will get rid of it. It will go away. And the older you are, the harder it is to get that back, and the less you want it to go away. So the other thing that's corollary to that is getting injured. It's really important as you get older, and I think we all feel this intuitively anyway, it's really important not to become injured as you age, because it gets harder and harder to recover and come back to full strength for a whole host of reasons. And so keep going. I would encourage your parents, Richard, to not stop being active. Absolutely keep being active. It's like the best thing they can do to have a happy and healthy, old age.
Steve, this has been incredible. I love hearing all the science about what we should do and why we should do it. I want to say thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to share this. There's a few other questions we didn't get around to that were asked in advance, so we'll follow up with those after the webinar. And we're also going to put this on YouTube. So if you want to, if you like this and you want to share it afterwards, we'll send everyone who registered a link, and you can share it with your friends. And, I think the most fun you can do is build a training group, having other people that are spurring you along, checking in to make sure you're doing it. And the Uphill Athlete programs are just perfect because it tells you every day what you need to do. And at least for me, it's proof that it works here. 10 weeks in, I've seen a noticeable change in my fitness.
Yeah, and we also do social groups with people, a bunch of people that are going to a certain track or a certain peak or doing a certain ultra run or whatever, and we get them together. All our training groups involve a social aspect, and there's a platform, a sort of a social platform that people can connect with. They can find each other in real life, and we've had a lot of real friendship. We haven't had a marriage yet, but I'm waiting for that to happen.
Excellent. All right, Steve, thank you for this, and thanks everyone for attending and asking the great questions. And pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Richard. Really appreciate it. Pleasure to talk to your team.
Excellent. Bye-bye, everybody.